Hi, everyone. I'm so excited, y'all. I'm so excited. Welcome to the sharing group. Today's lesson of A Course in Miracles is lesson 104, and it states, I seek but what belongs to me in truth. I seek but what belongs to me in truth. And our next guest has done just that. Okay. She has sought what has belonged to her in truth. Galactic Ambassador Eesha Patel specializes, y'all, in the field of galactic consciousness. Eesha is here to facilitate the connection between humans and our galactic family. She is currently doing her PhD in UFO and UAP studies, focusing on intergalactic communications and diplomacy. And I'll let her tell y'all the rest. Isha, welcome to the show. I'm so very excited to have you on.
Thank you, Loretta. Yes, I think we're going to have a fantastic conversation, and I think you nailed the intro beautifully.
Y'all, thank you. Girl, I cannot hide my excitement. So, Isha, start where you think it's appropriate, and we'll let you share your journey.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, so I started off in, I'll just go a little bit into the childhood stuff as well, because people always ask me, like, was there anything in your childhood? And so when I was younger, I had quite a few spiritual, like paranormal kind of experiences in my house with, like perceiving ghosts and that kind of thing. So from that young age, I was always quite open to this idea that maybe there's something else out there and just open to maybe the unseen realms a little bit. And yeah, that sort of led me into some interesting avenues. And growing up, I was pretty interested in supernatural stuff. I used to watch Charmed and some other TV shows. I used to read books about teen witches and I think that was because of the fact that I'd had these experiences from such a young age, and I was trying to make sense of what's possible in the world. So I guess that's how it kind of started in the very early years. But then, I went and had a relatively normal childhood for the most part. Did my teenage years and all that. And I still had like a few sort of, strange, odd, unexplainable kind of experiences. But it really wasn't until my mid-20s that things really went to that next level. And actually, even in my early 20s, I met this one lady, and she was my dance teacher at the time. Actually, I used to do a Brazilian dancing zouk for those who are familiar. So I used to love dancing. I was that person every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. I'd be out at the Latin clubs, having my fun. And yeah, this lady was one of my teachers, and she just said to me one day, she was like, are you energetically sensitive? And I was like, I don't really know what that means. Like, what is that? And she asked me some questions. She said, do you pick up on energies? And so I was thinking about, at the time we were having the conversation, I was thinking about this time in my life where like I would just have these really strange electrical interferences with technologies and lights and things like like those older phones back in the days, or they used to have all the static and everything. So like I had a lot of those experiences, and I could never make sense of what that was. And so when she asked me that question, I thought, yeah, I think actually I must be like, I must have something going on there. So anyway, I signed up to actually work with her for a year. So she was my first spiritual mentor. And honestly, I think having that guidance was one of the best decisions I ever made, because it massively accelerated my journey in ways that I never could have. So here I am at 21, all my friends are out, partying and whatever else in college and at university, and I mean I was there like going to this teacher's house in the hills to learn meditation, so that's what I did in my early 20s. And she taught me a very specific style of meditation, which was how to activate my Merkaba light body. And the Merkaba is a geometry, and it has three parts. It's the Mer, the Ka, and the Ba. Essentially, it's the body of light, the energy field that we all have available to us. And so I did a number of sessions with her over the course of a year. She taught me how to do this meditation, and pretty quickly, I started to connect with my angelic guides, and just things started to open up. And I remember in our very, very last session together, I was sitting down with her and I just it was kind of like my graduation, you know. She kind of left me in the room by myself. She's like, I've held space for you for the first few. Now you're gonna go off and you're gonna do this session on your own. And I said, all right, cool. So I was sitting there in her one of her spare rooms and I remember getting this really, really loud sound in my ears, like this kind of droning sound, like it was just I actually thought there was a chainsaw outside, like somebody was out there, like, you know, with a leaf blower or like a chainsaw or something. Like that's how loud it was. And yeah, so I was sitting in there, and then as that sound came in, and then I remember seeing in my mind's eye, I literally saw my third eye, which I didn't know it was my third eye at the time, but I saw an indigo colored eye, and it was closed, and it just went ping, like it just opened up. So. So I mean, keep in mind, I was still in my early 20s. I had no idea what was going on, you know. But I was like, wow, that was really cool. Like, what a cool experience, you know. So yeah, so that happened for me. And then of course after that, you know, I started to get the visions and things just started to open up after that. So that was my last session with her. But I then went and I did the practice on my own for another year or so after that. And it was in that time when I was doing my own solo practices. There was this one very specific meditation where I was sitting down on the floor and I was activating my Merkaba light body in the way that I'd been taught. And then I had this experience where I was like, my body completely dissolved and I was in this complete oneness. Like I couldn't even explain it. And in that experience, I heard this voice that came through me and said, you're in the 13th dimension. Now, looking back on that, I know now that the voice was my higher self. I was connecting with my higher self energy and it was giving me advice, which I didn't know it then. But I just thought that was really cool. And then, you know, I went on Google and I was trying to find like what's the 13th dimension and nothing really came up. So I was like, well, you know, what am I going to do with that? And so I just had to learn how to explore it myself. And that became my introduction to this idea that there are dimensions out there, but also potentially that we're multidimensional beings because we can cross into these dimensions and we can access these realms. Now, for the next year or so, again, nothing much really happened with that. I had this like isolated, singular, really cool experience and sort of just put it in the back of my mind. Now, in my mid 20s, that's when things really started to shift. And at that point, so this is probably like sort of 3 years of consistent practice now. I've been doing the practice every day. I've been activating my Merkaba light body. I've been working with the crystalline diamond templates, bringing in those diamond energies into my field. And just by doing it day after day after day, I think I really started to shift something in my energy field. And so when I got to my around my mid 20s, I actually went through a really big transition in life. And so I'd be dating this guy for 3 years. We were going to get married, you know, it's like a whole thing. Anyway, we broke up. And the trauma of that, like just that dissolution of all of that and the heartbreak and all of that, that kind of catapulted me actually into a spiritual awakening. So that was the moment where everything really, really shifted. And within a matter of weeks, not even, I think like about 2 weeks later, I had my first experience of channeling where a being actually came through me. And I wasn't even familiar with the concept of that. Like I'd kind of heard about it, like, hey, this is the thing that could be possible, you know. But it's not like I sat there and watched videos or I didn't even know about Abraham Hicks or whatever at that time, you know. So I was like so fresh into this, and yeah, I had the actual experience of it myself. And yeah, within a week after that, I started connecting with Arcturians, Pleiadians, and the Arcturians they shared with me a series of sacred geometry codes. And the way that appeared was I'd be sitting in meditation. The first one actually came to me when I was at a friend's meditation circle. She was leading the circle and I was just there and I was doing my own practice. And yeah, I saw this vision of this blue triangle and it was a very specific geometry. Like it had these very intricate kind of pieces in it. Um, so yeah, I when I saw that, I thought, oh, that's really cool. And I drew it straight away. And over the course of the next few days, I got several of these symbols. So these symbols just started coming to me and I drew them in my notebook. And then I just got this really strong message, Eesha, you need to share this with people. Now, at that point, I had no experience in meditation. I never taught anything. I wasn't even trained in Reiki at that point. Like I had just nothing, you know, like no formal training. But I was getting this connection and I was getting told that you need to share it. So from the moment my spiritual awakening started, which was off the back end of this breakup, 6 weeks later, I was facilitating my first event. So I took these symbols, I went on Microsoft Word at, like the old one at the time, and I just, I used the little lines to draw up all the little shapes. Like I literally, it was so amateur. I just made it myself. I printed them on little bits of cardboard and I handed them to people at this event. And we had 7 people that came to my very first ceremony that I did with no facilitation experience. I said, guys, come along. I charged them, a few bucks just to do a meditation. And I thought, if this is a complete disaster, I'll just give them their money back and we'll have a cup of tea. Like, so I just thought, let me give it a try. But actually what happened was people ended up having really powerful connections, and 3 people in the room connected with the Arcturian starship at the time that we did the experience. So that was my very first experience of facilitating, and the fact that it was so powerful, so potent, people had these like healing experiences, like it was just really quite intense. And yeah, so that was kind of like that tipping point where I was like, oh my God, I think there's something in this. And then, then the rest of the journey is like one event led to another, led to another. Then I started doing a weekly Friday night meditation group, and then eventually got to a point where I dropped out of my career as an early childhood educator, and I went into this full time. So, I mean that now was like 9 years ago, 10 years ago almost. But that's pretty much the journey of how I got to where I am today.
Wow, that is so exciting. Thank you for sharing. That is exciting stuff. Okay, so the first question, Eesha, that I wanted to ask, when you started channeling, this was just you, right? There was nobody you were channeling for. You just felt the energy of a being come and you started speaking. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went. And what was so unique about it was that I couldn't even keep up with the stream of consciousness that was coming through. Like in my very early channeling days, I wouldn't even remember what I've said. Like I would just channel and the words would just come through, and I'd have to record it to be able to listen back as to what's actually come out, because I'd be speaking really fast. Like the energy is just like my brain couldn't keep up with the vibration. I channel quite differently now. I'm a lot more in tune with the energy, and I don't do trance channeling anymore, which is a whole different story. But that's how I started off. That was like sort of like those amateur days where I was more in the trance channeling end of the spectrum. And I think, it's because if your body and your mind are not ready to actually hold that frequency, it's almost easier to get out of the way. And that's what trance channeling is. You get yourself out of the way and the energy comes through. I no longer recommend that as a form of channeling. It's actually very unsafe. But that's how I started. And I've since learned better ways to have those communications, and having more direct conscious contact rather than more of like a channeling kind of state.
Yeah, I've heard you mention that the trans channeling, that's not the highest form to relay information because you're kind of giving your entire body over to another energy. So yeah, I've heard you talk about that, that it's a better way to just relay the information, right? You maybe
Exactly.
hear it and then you express it. That is so cool. Okay. Let me ask you this because I'm very excited, and I know my viewers are very excited about this topic. So, would you say that the entryway into opening up communication with extraterrestrial beings is through the Merkaba light body practice?
The Merkaba light body activation is definitely one of many ways. And again, it's important to sort of say that that's how I did the journey. But if I'm teaching it to someone else now, I'd do it quite differently.
Okay.
Because with all the learnings that I have and everything that I've picked up along the way that I did it was kind of like I kind of just stumbled into it. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. It's the difference between learning how to drive in like the old rickety broken down car versus like I'm gonna start driving with a Mercedes. So I had the old rickety rundown car, but when I teach it to my students, I give them an upgraded version of that and kind of help them to not make some of the same mistakes that I made. Look, I don't really agree with mistakes so much because it was part of my learning journey. But if I can find a more optimized way to teach it to other people, I'll obviously tell them the better way to have done it, or the way that I probably in hindsight should have done it, But I didn't have all the tools and the resources. And so when my students come to me, I'm able to give them a lot more of that background and that knowledge than what I had when I started, because I went in with nothing, man. Like I got thrown into this. So and to be fair, like I don't recommend that pathway. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I wish I could just have an overnight spontaneous awakening like you." And I'm saying, "No, you don't. You absolutely do not wish that. I would rather you meditate every day for a year and learn how to access your inner heart and learn how to activate properly, so that when that awakening does happen, it doesn't shock you." Because mine was also quite traumatic, and like I went a lot of look, a lot of people experience spiritual awakening through trauma, but that's because it's like that saying, first you get the feather, then you get the brick, and then you get the truck. Like if you don't listen to the little signs, my intuition, looking back now, my intuition had been telling me for years before that to start doing more spiritual practices, and my guides had been telling me to do more yoga and do all of these things. But guess who didn't listen? Guess who didn't follow the guidance? So when that moment did happen for me, it was actually quite shocking. It affected me physically in a lot of ways. It affected me
Mhm.
emotionally, mentally. It was a very, very difficult journey. But, if you can learn the proper ways in how to do this, you will make the journey a lot smoother. And that's typically what I see with a lot of my students is they don't have to go through the same roller coaster that I went through, because they're able to just get a more up-leveled version of it.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you that. Did you, so you did experience a shock.
Oh, yeah,
Did you
absolutely. It was
experience
horrible.
fear? Did you
Oh,
experience,
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to
Yeah.
extraterrestrials. Who do I tell? And how can I
Yeah.
tell them I'm not going crazy? Like, uh, tell us a little bit about your journey of uh, staying in your authenticity, right? Not allowing what others think to kind of stop you from going toward this path.
Well, to be fair, I mean that first year was really challenging. Like you
Mhm.
said, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't know who I could go to for guidance. And actually, even the lady who originally taught me the meditation, by the time I'm talking to Galactics, even she couldn't help me because she hadn't gotten that far herself.
Wow.
So I kind of took the tool that she learned, but I kind of ran with it in a way that even she wasn't able to support me. So when I sort of got to that point, I was like, okay, now I really don't have anyone. If my own mentor can't help me through this, now where do I go? And Google certainly wasn't helping. So anyway, I reached out in the best ways that I could. And also one thing I want to say is that even though it was challenging, there were moments when I did also meet the right people at the right times. There's also that thing of when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I fumbled my way through that first year, and then eventually I did meet someone who who then became another bit of a guide or a mentor to me, and she's the one who taught me how to access my inner heart space. Now she learnt this practice from someone else who learned it from someone. There's a sort of a lineage to this, but basically, she told me about this practice. She said, "Look, if you've already done the Merkaba stuff, and I went into a house already connecting with Acturians. Like the first time I went to her place, she had a picture of a starship on her computer, and I took one look at it, and I went, "Oh, that's an Acturian starship." And I think she was quite impressed that I was able to pick that up. So
Wow.
anyway, so she became a really good friend and mentor to me over the years as well. And she told me about this practice called the inner heart meditation. So when she told me about this, I went home, I ran with it, I practiced it, I did it every day. And I found that that particular practice is what allowed me to really ground in all of that channeling and those abilities into a more heart-centered kind of way. So what the Merkaba light body activation did was it opened everything up. My crown was open, my third eye was open, everything became really open, but it was ungrounded, and there was trauma and everything else going on too. So the inner heart practice, actually, then I found that was a lot more helpful. And so when I dropped into my heart space and I discovered my inner temples, I discovered it's basically, look, the best way to describe it is there's a universal language of consciousness that we all have. The inner heart is a place, it's a place in the etheric realms that the other beings also know about. So when I go into my heart space, the Arcturians can meet me in there. The Pleiadians can meet me in there. Ashtar and the Galactic Federation can meet me in there. So when I learned how to go in there, I no longer needed to have those energies come in a trance form. I became very lucid in my ability to be able to connect. So through my inner temples, through my inner heart space, that's where my journey went to the next level. And I realized how to connect with any being in the universe, any realm, whether it's angelic, whether it's galactic, whether it's higher self. So that's the practice I've kind of run with for the last maybe 8, 9 years. And even now, like I mean, I do this practice every day. I was in my inner heart before I jumped on this recording today, so it's the practice that I do now every day for myself to get me connected in. And I think that's what so many people are missing these days, right? They just don't know how to get connected. They don't know how to tap in. And then people are flailing around like I was, 10 years ago, not knowing what's going on. And so it's just about having like the right tools and the right processes, which for me, yeah, so the Merkaba was great, but it was the inner heart practice that really took things to the next level. And so that's now what I teach people. When I have students, I teach them the inner heart before I teach them the Merkaba, because to me, I feel like that's probably the better way to do it.
Wow, so it's almost like when you go into your inner heart, it's almost like you're setting a meeting. Like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
exactly. Yeah.
schedule with the Octarians at 9:30 and I'll schedule with the that's
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I love that. Okay, so Eesha, you communicate with over 20 different galactic races. Can you walk us through some of the main beings you work with and how their energies or messages differ?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I should have a list. People always ask me this question, and then I forget to have my list there. But I'll just try and rattle them off the top of my head. Oh, and also just on the scheduling thing, you know how you're saying. I actually love the way you phrase that because some people, if you don't actually go in and make those meetings, as you said, they'll wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like they have a tendency to just like tap on you at like those weird hours, and now I'm like, no, no, I want my good night's sleep. I will see you when we go into the inner heart. So
They love 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, don't they?
they
Like
do.
that's
They
that's
really
their
do.
time. I love that.
I have to tell them, excuse me, guys, we do need some sleep.
Okay, I love that.
So let's see, who do I connect with? So there's the Acturians. The Acturians were among the first of the beings that I met. When I first connected with them, I didn't know they were Acturians. They just called themselves a Council of Light. So I kind of just ran with that for a while. And yeah, then I found out it was the Arcturian Council of Light, and they were the ones that showed me the sacred geometries. Now, they're very proficient when it comes to energetic healing, working with sacred geometries. There's very specific ways in which they work. So, yeah, that when I look back on those codes that I receive now, very classically Arcturian. And because they were healing codes, and DNA activation codes, I was like, oh, of course that came from the Arcturians. So that's the Arcturians. Then there's the Pleiadians, who I've also had quite a bit of contact with. There's one being in particular. She calls herself Elmira from the Pleiadian High Council. And so she's coming through the Elohim frequency as well as the Mira frequency, which is her name in the Pleiadian High Council. And so Mira, she's yeah, beautiful being. She's wise, she's loving, she's just sometimes I just connect in and I just say hello. I just want to like be in that energy. So a lot of conversations we've had over the years. One thing in particular that I learned from Elmira and the Pleiadians was they told me almost I think almost 10 years ago. So sort of December 2015, I was in Uluru, and Uluru is a very sacred site here in Australia, and there's a very strong Pleiadian connection here. And so when I was there in 2015, it was my first time visiting. I was there with my family. And that's the time that they shared with me that they basically said 8 to 10 years from now, you're going to go back into academia and you're going to, like research this sort of stuff with the dimensions and all that. And so now here we are in 2025, and I just started my PhD last year. Well, actually, this year in January, last month. So it's interesting, like that communication that I had from the Pleiadians all those years ago has now come true now but in ways that I couldn't have even comprehended because the course that I'm doing right now, the PhD in intergalactic communications, the course only started like a year ago. So like 8 years ago, the course wasn't even there, but they still somehow said, hey, this is what you're going to be doing like 8 to 10 years from now. So yeah, so that was a bit of a wild experience I had with them. Who else do I talk to? Syrians, they have beautiful, beautiful watery energies. I connect with a lot of the whale and the dolphin beings on Sirius as well. I've had a bit of contact with the Andromedans from the Andromeda Galaxy. Actually, this year, 2025, there's a lot of communication coming through Andromeda, and there's a couple of people I'm working with, students of mine who have strong Andromedan connections. And so I'm helping them to bring their missions online this year because there's some really powerful things happening through the Andromeda Galaxy at this point in time. Who else do I connect with? Oh, there's some non-human beings I connect with as well. So one of my favorites are the jellyfish beings from the IC 443 constellation. Very specific. And the reason why I have that connection is because I have a soul aspect who is currently floating around like a big blobby etheric pink jellyfish. So that's an energy I tune in with. Who else? I mean, I have connected with yeah, so many of the common ones as well. Not all of them have a high vibration, so I'm quite mindful that there's different energies. Antarians I've connected with. Altarians were ones that came through quite recently for me from the Altair star system. What else? I think that's all I can remember for the moment. Yeah.
I love that that you have a connection with the jellyfish beings. It reminds me, I had a guest, an indie ear, who was saying, she said, y'all better get to know y'all third cousins, the extraterrestrial beings. They're your third cousins. So okay, just for the record, we are some of these beings, right? We're multidimensional beings, right? Right. We're in this dimension, we're in human form, but we also are extraterrestrials. Is that correct?
Well, there are some nuances in that. So,
Okay. All right. Break
okay,
it down for us
part
then.
of it comes down to how we define what's extraterrestrial and what's not. Like by definition
Okay.
of the fact that if you were born in a human body on Earth, that makes you human because you were born on Earth, right? So
Right.
from that perspective, we're actually all human because we were born here. But there's also the element of where your soul comes from and what experiences your soul has had. Now, to understand this, there's a bit of context that's needed here, which is that we are multidimensional beings. And how do we access those other aspects of self? Well, if you imagine that this hand here is the higher self, right? Now, the whole hand is the higher self, but each of these thumb, the fingers, these are the different soul aspects. So say this thumb here is Eesha. She's having an experience here on Earth, right here, right now. Now, if Eesha is only aware of the thumb and not aware of the higher self or any of the other beings, then she's going to have the experience of just being human, right? But if Isha is able to, through meditation, expand the awareness to the full palm and go, oh, Isha is connected to a palm and that palm is connected to other fingers. Now suddenly there's an awareness of the multidimensional self. So you go from the 3D self or the human self, however you want to call it, into your awareness of your higher self, which encompasses all of your soul aspects. And then you can draw upon these different rays of experiences that you're having. One example that I can give is I have a fifth dimensional self called Lily, who's currently on board the starship called the Aru Terra. She works very closely with the Galactic Federation. So if the thumb is Isha, the finger would be Lily. And then the jellyfish self would be another finger. And then I've got a Lyran self and I've got an angelic self and there's thousands, right? So it's just expanding that awareness from this and then through activating the light body, through going into your inner heart, through expanding your awareness into higher self, you can first expand from the I self or the human self into the higher self, and then from the higher self you expand out into all of these other aspects. That is your soul, your overarching soul is having these experiences.
Yeah, I love that you broke that down because the intent is for people to understand, because we've been conditioned into believing the whole extraterrestrial think phenomena is something to be afraid of. It's for weird people. It's those people over there. And that conditioning program has been very effective throughout the years. So to acknowledge, like you said, our multidimensionality, that actually some of those beings are us on the soul level. Of course, not in these bodies, in this experience, but we're not just we're not just this experience. We are everything in a moment of now. So I'm glad that you broke that down. That's really my intent and your intent in just even having this conversation. If someone is just beginning to explore their galactic connections, what's the first step, Eesha, that you think they should take?
Number one, start a daily meditation practice and not just any meditation. This is really important because not every meditation will get you there. If you go and do a Buddhist meditation, which I love going to the Buddhist center near my house from time to time, it's fantastic, but it's a mindfulness practice. That's not the practice that's going to help connect to your galactic self. What I do have is a meditation called the Four Foundation Practices, and I'm happy to send it out to anyone who wants it. It's basically 4 steps that help you prepare your energy field for these kinds of experiences. It's not the meditation that will actually get you the contact, because if we're talking to beginners, you need that first step. So the first step is you do the 4 foundations, where you open up your heart energy, you connect to source, connect to Gaia. We work with the golden Taurus field. These are preparation exercises. And then when you're ready to go to the next level, then I would recommend people come and do the inner heart journey, where you actually learn the full process of how to go into the inner heart, into your temples, and have the connection that way. But as a starting point, do the 4 foundation practices daily. And it's a 15-minute meditation. I'm happy to send it out to anyone who wants it.
Yeah, that's exciting. Thank you for that. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about like what you offer, because I think it's important that people, have the ability to venture into to that communication. I think it starts with just being open, right? Just being open to communicating. You touched a little bit on this, Eesha, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it, that not every extraterrestrial being is benevolent, right? Like just like there are different variations of us, of human beings, there are different vibrations of extraterrestrial beings. How do you go about discerning who is in your best interest to communicate with and who's are not?
So there's one practice that I teach all of my students, and well, there's a couple of them, but the one that's the easiest to grasp is that everything operates in this vibrational field of awareness, right? So kind of like law of attraction, like what you put out is what gets attracted into your field.
Mhm.
And discernment is everything. I mean, I tell all of my students again and again and again how important it is to discern who are you connecting with, where does this being come from, what is their agenda, what vibration are they coming from, a love vibration, or are they trying to use your energy? It's so important that we do that. It's simpler than you think though. And the thing is, if we are coming from a loving vibration and we emanate that love out in a very conscious way, any being that's coming towards you and trying to make contact will have to match that vibration in order to communicate,
Mm.
right? So if I'm ever unsure, and I still do this when I'm meeting new beings, if I'm ever unsure, I take a moment just to pause and I breathe into the heart space. And there's a very specific practice. It's actually one of the ones that we teach in the 4 foundation practices. It's called the heart star. It's that inner starlight that we all have within you. And when you radiate that light out with the intention to send love, and you're sending love out through your whole field, what you're doing in that moment is you're raising your vibration. And by raising your vibration, any being who wants to now communicate with you has to match that frequency. And one of two things usually happens. The being is a beautiful, benevolent being of a loving vibration and they embrace you, they come closer. So, for example, I might send this loving light out, and then soon as I send it, I might see their energy coming towards me. They might put their hand on my heart to show their frequency and to feel their frequency,
Wow.
or there might be a third eye to third eye connection, although most of the time it's a heart connection. That's one thing that can happen. The second, which is a bit more rarer in my experience, is that I send this loving energy out and the being stands there and does nothing. They just don't do anything. They don't come closer. So that's straight away red flag. You know,
Wow.
if they're not coming into that field of love, if they're not embracing that loving energy, if there's any hesitation on their part, right, that's it. No, if you're not coming in with that pure energy, you use the violet flame, or you ask Archangel Michael, or you ask Arcturians or whatever to come in and help you to make that being go away. Because remember, we are sovereign, right? Nothing can happen without permission. Nothing is allowed in your field unless you allow it. So, it's raising your vibration, which is the bit you're responsible for. Like each person is responsible for raising their vibration. If somebody is having negative experiences, or somebody is having, attachments, implants, entities, all that sort of thing going on, then number one, you need to get onto those four foundation practices. You need to radiate that inner starlight, and you need to get your golden Taurus field as a very protective field. You need to get that up and running beautifully. Once that's there, the rest of it is going to not be allowed into your field anymore. So it's taking self-responsibility. It's going, you know what, I'm going to lift my vibration because that's the bit that I can do. You can't control what any other being in the universe is going to do, right? You just can't. Like, what you can do is you can lift your vibration. So you open your heart, you send that loving energy out. And then if something feels off, you trust that. That's really important because people second guess it, they doubt it, or they just get so excited that they're connecting with something that they just allow it in. And I say, no, it doesn't matter. Even I don't care. Yeah, just because
Yeah.
they're from another dimension or another galaxy doesn't mean you want that person in your
Yeah.
energy field.
Yeah.
The best analogy I can give you around that is like, it's like if there's, somebody just walking in off the street, you wouldn't let them into your home. You would find out who they are, if they're good, they're not going to rob your house, like, that sort of stuff. So the same way that we'd be discerning with people, we'd be discerning. But there's a there's also a level of trust that you have in yourself, because if you've done the work and you've raised your vibration, then you can also release that fear as well. Because sometimes when people go in with a lot of fear into these connections, and so it's really important that you go in with a high vibration, but also don't go in with the fear. You go in with a
Yeah.
loving energy, and you go in with that trust that I am in my sovereignty, I am in my light, and you move into the connection with that, and you will then attract beings of light. I mean, that's just law of vibration.
I love that you said that, because that's with any non-physical being, right? Not just extraterrestrial beings, any non-physical beings that we interact with, you want to do that, whatever kind of check to ensure that they have a high vibration. I love that. So I have heard you say that 2027 is significant for open contact. So why is that? Why is 2027 significant for that?
Well, let's take a little bit of history on that first. So 2027 wasn't the first date. There was quite a lot of energy behind 2012, the ending of the Mayan calendar, the starting of the Age of Aquarius. In a different timeline, that would have been the point that we would have actually had open contact with ETs. But what actually happened was humanity was nowhere near that point, not even remotely ready to have had that experience. And so what happens is, timelines, they get adjusted. The time frames get adjusted based on where people are at. One thing that's really, really important to the Galactic Federation and, galactic races is that when we reunite with our galactic family, it's done in a really peaceful way. What we don't want is for there to be a really big traumatic kind of, doomsday, which a lot of the films, unfortunately, are kind of promoting this real, like, really dark kind of timeline, which I'm just not a fan of. it's that peaceful, loving, open, almost to the point where it's like we're kind of seeing this now where it's so spoken about that when that moment happens, it's not even going to shock people anymore. I mean, we're at a point now, like in our consciousness, where if a little green guy walked into somebody's room, like you go, oh, that's an ET. Like there's at least enough awareness to go, oh, that's what that is. So I think a big part of it is removing that shock factor, and that's why we are seeing a lot of media attention. There's a lot of conversation happening. I know some people are disappointed by how slow it's going, and the congressional hearings just seem to say a whole lot of nothing sometimes. But if you really see what's going on at the finer layers of the timelines and what's happening from the higher perspective, we are actually on a really good track for this peaceful contact to happen. The key word there being peaceful and not doomsday. So that is why now 2027 has been marked as the next highest potential of that. Now, that's not to say that like it's not a prediction. I think it's important people know that some people are acting like it's a prediction, whereas what the beings have said to me is it's a vision that we are working towards. And by that, we are actively working towards that. So how that works is, we create our reality, the collective consciousness creates this reality. The more of us that focus on that unified timeline, we are actually going to enact it. We are going to create that to become true because nothing is ever a solid prediction, right?
Right.
Timelines are always changing.
Yes.
Outcomes can always change. 2020 was another big milestone as well, but again, things got readjusted and readjusted, and so now, okay, let's keep the vision on 2027. And why I keep talking about this is because it's not a prediction coming from them. It's think about it like a guidance of a vision that we can work towards. So how can we between today in 2025 and 2027, what can we each personally do? Well, if people listen to shows like this and they actively do the meditations and they lift their vibration, now we have a much better chance of actually getting to that 2027 culmination point. So it's how do we work towards that and what are we doing to bring that vision to life for 2027?
Yeah, that's beautifully said. That's beautifully said. And this is something that's going to occur from within us, right? Isha, I think that's pretty much what you just said. Like it's about our readiness, our openness, us releasing the fear from the movies that you referenced, which were, I believe, programming to keep us away from that, releasing that fear and to step into that space of allowing and really being excited about the idea. Did you have an adjustment because your third eye was open, which means you could see with your third eye some of these beings? Did you have to like, were you like shocked at first and have to like, okay, I'm getting ready to see an Nocturian. I'm not gonna be scared. Like, what was that process for you?
Well, the thing is, they again, they didn't shock me into it to that extent, and that's why
Okay.
they kind of drip fed me for that first year. So I didn't even know it was Yacturians. I couldn't see them. I mean, I could kind of
Okay.
perceive the energy, and that's also speaking to the evolution I've had. So when I do my practice now, I get a very clear visual on the being. I see their color frequency. I can get a name. Back then, all I had was a general we're a council of light. So. I think from that regard, they very intentionally sort of slowly, acclimatize me. But there were also moments where I was like, what the heck's going on? Am I going crazy? So I kind of went through that a little bit as well. And then also what happened was at the same time, like a book would come into my awareness, or a person, or a conversation, or an article on the news. I mean, even going back to when I was like 14, now I look back on it and I see how much I was primed for this role because my soul obviously agreed to this. And I used to go on Wikipedia and I used to hit the wiki random button. And so at 14 years old, I'm reading articles about Area 51. Like, who does that? So in that regard, yes, there were moments that were really shocking for me, but also I can see how much I've been guided at the same time. And even though some of those moments were really challenging, there's always been like a safety net or something to catch me so that I've always managed to make it through.
Love that. I love that. So just, I feel like I have to ask, just to be clear, we all of us have the ability to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's just like learning Spanish. I mean, geez, like, if you want to learn Spanish, you go do a 6-month course and you learn Spanish. You want to learn how to speak Galactic, you come and learn how to do the inner heart meditation and you can speak Galactic. It literally is the same, kind of energy that it would take. If you can learn to speak another language, you can learn to speak the language of consciousness. So, yeah, anyone can do it. I truly believe that.
So, Isha, you have, speaking of that, so you have an online community, right, where you help entrepreneurs and people connect with their galactic guides. What's the most important thing that you teach your students about making contact? Where can we go from here?
The number one thing is I always tell people to come at it from a heart-centered frequency. And one thing that I do teach my students, see, the thing is, a lot of people only want to connect if there's going to be some sort of benefit to them. Like, I'm going to connect because it's going to help me with my abundance, or I'm going to connect because they can help me heal, or there's always a because in that, you know?
Mhm.
And yeah, I get that, but at the same time, my why is it's because I love them and I want to reconnect. They're my family. It's that unconditionalness that sort of comes in, unconditionality. So yeah, when I'm working with my students, like yes, of course. I mean, my students do have instantaneous healings. They do manifest abundance. They do like my entrepreneurial clients land massive contracts. All of those things happen. But don't let that be your why. If you can come at it from a place of love and you can come at it from just that pure unconditional desire to remember and awaken, that's when you get the most out of it. And anything else that happens is a side effect. Like, people's lives do improve dramatically, but don't go in with that because they're more than just tools that you use to help you in your journey to get profits or whatever. And, just reframing that is probably the first thing that I can say.
So, Isha, you have an event in March, right? So, tell us about,
Yeah.
you have an event, how to elevate your life and business to 5D consciousness. Talk about that.
Yeah, so this is our 5-day introductory event. We do have this event coming up every few weeks, so you can always go to the website and see when the next dates are. The next one we have coming up is from March 3rd to 7th, and it's an introductory course to the inner heart journey. So for anyone who wants to learn how to access the inner heart, learn how to access the Merkaba light body activation, this is the best way to kind of dip your feet in to see if this work is for you. So it's a 5-day program. It's about 90 minutes a day, and you learn the basics. So you'll learn the 4 foundation practices to start with. Then you'll also learn the introduction to the inner heart. I, of course, can't teach the whole process in 5 days, but you'll get a bit of a taste of it. And then you'll also learn how to listen to the language of your higher self, so how to get that deeper level of clarity. And you'll also learn some basic clearing tools on how to do the violet flame practice. And then from the 5-day event, if you feel like, yep, this is great, then you can jump in and you can do the full 12-week immersion, which is the inner heart journey as well.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Tell us about, so is the best way to contact you via your website if somebody wanted to be connected and to take advantage of your classes? Tell us how we can contact you. I know there are many people that are gonna want to reach out and start this process.
Yeah, the best way to connect is actually just shoot us an email. So just go to contact@eeshapatel.com, send us an email, and we can either send you the meditation or we can get you started into some of our courses or we can direct you to whatever resources are most suitable for you at whatever stage you're at in your journey.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I'm gonna put that email address in the description box for everybody. That website. Does the Federation have anything to share with the collective at this time, Isha?
They're always, always happy to share their love with you. I'm happy for them to come through if they want. Um, hmm. I always feel the energy shift when I just really like, you can feel that, right? They're saying how much we love you and we're so ready to embrace you and we're here for you. Reach out to us. This is a just such an amazing time of awakening, and we're here, we're watching you as you go through this, and we're so ready with excitement to embrace you when that time comes.
Beautiful, beautiful message. Thank you for that. And Eesha, do you have anything else you would like to to talk about before we close out? You've given us much information. I'm excited. I'm gonna tell you, I'm excited. I've been really wanting this, and I'm the timing of this is really great for me. And so yeah, I'm glad to be embarking on this. I think it's important. Like you said, let's make 2027 the year, y'all. Let's make that the year. Let's begin the inner journey, the inner process now. But is there anything else that you would like to say before I do the closing remarks?
Just one final thing, and that is, Star Family have been telling me for years and years and years now that we only need 1% of the population truly anchoring that 5D vibration, and that will create a collective vibrational shift. And so my final message to anyone who's listening is, will you become a part of that 1%? Will you be the one to step up, lift your vibration? Not just for yourself, but for the greater collective good. That's the vision, that's the mission that we're on. And this is your invitation. The time is now.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for that. And so, Eesha, let me read you your closing remarks. This has been a beautiful, beautiful engagement. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. So, Eesha, historically, we have experienced incredible social conditioning into fearing our engagement with extraterrestrial beings. This conditioning has been effective throughout history as it has used humiliation and censorship to dismiss UFO sightings and extraterrestrial communication. But one can only delay the recognition of the light that we are. Just like the surety of our evolution is fated, so is the divine reunion with our extraterrestrial families is also written in the stars. And the divine wisdom of Source knew that we would need a fresh, vibrant spark of light, such as yourself, to help us usher in and ground the reality that we are indeed multidimensional beings, that we are not our bodies, and that we are living many different lifetimes in many different dimensions in this divine moment of now. So, Eesha, your agreement to have these amazing experiences that go beyond the confines of what many people believe is possible has required tremendous courage and a profound freedom from fear and social conditioning that is delicious to observe. You have renewed my enthusiasm to explore my extraterrestrial lineage, and I would be excited to participate in your leadership in helping me connect with the other beings that I am in other realms. And it is this thirst, Eesha, that you renew in us that makes your work here holy. This exploration of our multidimensionality is something that I personally think we all should venture into. As you have said, it is important and is related to our collective evolution. Thank you so much for your soul level agreement to have these profound experiences at such a young age. And thank you for your courage to stay firmly seated in your truth, regardless of what other people may say or think, that you courageously walk right into your divine purpose during this impactful time on this planet. Thank you for being here, Eesha, for sharing your energy with us and assisting us all in opening our minds and hearts to that which we are. And so, thank you for being here. And it has been an absolute pleasure. I would like to have you on again. Maybe when you write your book, we putting that out in the universe, okay? No, it's been very nice having you on.
Thank you. Yeah, there is a book in the works. I just need to publish it.
There you go. See, there you go. I love it. And Eesha, we end with a heart. I love it. I love it. And thank you, everyone who have tuned in to this. I hope that you all are just as excited as I am and researching, right? Our extraterrestrial lineage. This is so fun and exciting. And if you are still rocking with us, please subscribe, like, and share. We are building this beautiful community. Check out Eesha's website. I'll have that information in the description box. You have a YouTube channel as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll have
First
her.
Contact podcast.
Nice. I'll have that in the description box. Let's do this, y'all. Let's do this. All right. Love y'all so much. Bye.